What is up, retro movie fans? My name is Andrew Jasic alongside Matt Thrash, and today we are going back in time to November 18th through the 20th, 1990, to check out Stephen King's It.
November 18th through the 20th. I like it.
Yeah.
Good.
It was a miniseries that debuted at, oh my God, what was it, ABC, Fox, or something like that back in...
So that's a question. Was this a made-for-TV movie?
It was. It was a miniseries.
It was.
It's considered a miniseries, and I remember my mom was a huge Stephen King fan, and she was like adamant that we watch this. So we watched this, and then we watched. I don't know if you've ever seen The Stand when that came out. Great. It was it was a four-part miniseries. But yeah, Stephen King's It, and this is the movie that made me all scared of clowns. I don't know about you, but I was absolutely terrified.
Same here. Yeah, but you know what? This also was the movie that gave me a love for Tim Curry.
Oh, Tim Curry's a man. He's just...
Tim Curry, like this movie. This movie made me just like anytime I saw him in anything, like Home Alone 2, when he smiled, I'm like, that's it. That's Pennywise.
Pennywise. Yep, absolutely. So, starring Jonathan Brandis, Harry Anderson, Dennis Christopher, Richard Masur, Annette O'Toole, Tim Reed, John Ritter, Richard Thomas, and of course, our beloved Tim Curry. Directed by Tommy Lee Wallace. It had a budget of $12 million. I don't know. It's hard. There's no box office in made-for-TV movies, so it's difficult to say how much it made, but I'd imagine it did extraordinarily well in the ratings.
It made tens of millions of dollars in my heart.
Exactly, in my heart. That's all that mattered. Well, not to mention all the royalties and stuff that came afterwards. Like, everybody knew this movie. Everybody knew this movie.
Oh, yeah.
And IMDb only gave it a 6.8 out of 10.
Wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. IMDb is terrible. I'm gonna stop getting my reviews from there. If God forbid I watched, or if I saw that review before I watched the film, I never would have watched the film. You know what I mean? Like, oh, it stinks.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That's why we had it good, because what did we do, Andy? We went to the video store. You looked at the box, and you look at the back of the box. You're like, well, this looks kind of cool.
Right.
There's like a weird clown with a red balloon. That's interesting. You look at the box. You're like, okay, bunch of kids in Derry. Let's give this a shot.
Let's go.
And you think that you're getting the Goonies, and what do you get? You get this clown that fucks with you.
It's great. No, I said, it was the movie that made me scared of clowns. And I think, from what I heard, that this movie was probably one of the first in the scary clown genre.
Yes.
And I don't know how true that is, but... but obviously the book was made a couple years before the movie. But just to have something that is supposed to be so innocent and appealing to children be just so menacing is what just makes it so incredibly terrifying. Speaking of which, let's take everybody back and check out Stephen King's It. So we open with a black and white photo album with this really menacing music that is playing. Yes. I love the music in this film.
Yes.
It was really scary. And not to mention the fact that it wasn't just music, but it was sound effects. Like you hear it's almost like pages like ripping or something to that effect. Maybe balloons being rubbed. You know what I mean? You get that menacing sound, which is really, really cool. But it was a great opening to this series because you had flip pictures of Derry and the kids and everything, and this really ominous music. It was just really well done. But the opening scene we get is a rainy day, and this mother is telling her little girl, Lorianne, to come inside because it's about to storm. This kid...
What does that mean?
First of all, look, back in the 60s, parenting, or actually, I guess this would take place in the 90s, this particular scene, right? It was horrible parenting. You know what I mean? Parents just let their kids just do whatever, willy-nilly. You know what I mean? Let alone...
They let them go outside and play.
Let them go outside and play. And this chick was just in the midst of a thunderstorm, was just riding her little trike down the...
Just singing her song. Just happier than a pig and shit.
Yeah, happier than a pig and shit. She absolutely loved it. Good for her. I'm sure nothing's going to happen to her, though. We're fine. So
I think she's going to turn out just right.
Just fine. And then the movie ends and it's over.
And that's it.
She completes her song and we're done. And the mother is hanging out clothes to dry on these clotheslines. And Lorianne happens to see a figure inside, behind the sheets of the hanging laundry after she hears a little giggle. Yes. But I love this shot because she sees the sheets kind of open and you see the clown, right? And he's really happy, hey, hi. And
hi.
And then the sheets open again as you see a close-up of Lorianne's face kind of concerned. And then when the sheets open again, we see this clown looking disgustingly pissed off. Like
and he just looked so creepy, like oh my God, Tim Curry, like he was just a master at what he did, and this movie is an example of his master class. When he just like stood there and stared at the little girl, you just like felt, what the fuck?
Yeah, 100%, because it's like, again, it was that innocence of a clown, right?
Yes.
Shouldn't be looking that way at a child, and it was creepy. It was super creepy.
Yes.
Lorianne's mother comes back outside. I like this shot too because Lorianne's mother looks at this bicycle that's overturned and then looks somewhat to the side, and we never see this little girl's body, which is good. I couldn't imagine they would be able to show that on TV anyway. But the fear and the fright in this mother's voice, the pain in this mother's voice,
blood curdling scream, yes.
Great. It was really, really good. Super scary. So we then cut to an ambulance taking the child away, and we meet our first character in the film. His name is Mike, and Mike is questioning the police about something that is going on. And I love the way he describes terribly, the way he pronounces terribly.
Chief, there's something terribly wrong here in Derry.
But there's something terribly wrong.
But listen, terribly.
There's something terribly wrong.
You're terribly upsetting me right now. But Mike sees a little black and white picture of a small child, probably 6 years old. And he says, Georgie. This is all just hanging out by the tree for no apparent reason.
Yeah, Mike in front of this girl's house. The girl that just got mutilated right in front of her house.
In front of this little girl's house. And Mike gets very, very scared and realizes he has to call the others. We don't know exactly what that means, but we're about to find out. We then cut to Bill writing a book. So Bill is an author, and he's talking to his wife, Audra. And the book, honestly, this might have been the way it was written. First of all, I think Stephen King I don't think he's overrated, but some of the crap he writes is just stupid. You know what I mean? But like the narration that Bill was doing, and he's like, yeah, that was good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's not good. You know,
yeah.
It's just,
this is it.
Yeah. This is my gold mine right here.
This is the one. Yeah. Do writers do that? Are there any writers out there watching this? Like, do you like sit there all sweaty in your office and all of a sudden you're just like, fuck yeah. Fuck yeah.
A shadowy figure lurches into frame, dripping with foul water and dark, oozing mud. Yeah.
But Bill is talking to Audra, and in the middle of that conversation, Bill gets a phone call from Mike.
But he gets a flashback, and it's actually Austin Powers going, "Mole."
That
Spicy,
mole.
Most excellent agent we've ever seen.
That mole on that motherfucker.
That mole was everywhere. That mole should have gotten its own credit.
Because
of how much it was in the scene.
It should have. And it's funny, too, because when Bill has a flashback of him as a kid, as soon as Mike calls, they literally had to paint a mole on Jonathan Brandis' face. Just be like, okay, listen, we got to match this guy. But yeah, that mole, he was in like a couple other things, and it was all like moley.
You know, the mole was basically like the Tom Atkins of moles, man. It was like in every scene.
It was a star.
It was dominating every scene. It was the Tom Atkins mole. Hashtag Atkins mole.
Atkins mole. There it is.
Atkins
That's
mole.
The star of our movie. It's Mole Wise, the clown. Penny Mole. Clown.
Do you think he was a mole for the Secret Service?
Bill actually begins to stutter on the phone, and we don't understand exactly why.
Oh God, his stuttering, bro.
I know.
Sure.
Bill has a flashback to Georgie, and Bill is thinking about the time that his mother was playing this piano, and in his room he was really sick, and he gave a paper boat to his kid brother Georgie and tells him to go sail it. Georgie goes out and sails the boat, and the boat ends up coming down into a storm drain.
Yes.
Georgie leans down in the storm drain, decides that the boat's probably not savable, and then starts to walk away, but then he hears,
Hi, Georgie.
Oh, terrifying.
Just absolutely scary. And this whole scene was just like really, really scary just because of how incredibly friendly the clown was at the very beginning.
Yes.
You know, and the whole time.
And
he's
just
like,
the way he talked.
Aren't you going to say hello? Oh, come on, bucko. Don't you want a balloon?
Oh my God! Why were you even still there talking to him?
Yeah, dude. I don't care. Like, innocence aside, right? I would be the fuck out of there. I'd be the fuck out of there. I'd throw a firecracker in the storm drain and run away. I guarantee you had them because everybody in the '90s had a firecracker. We all had.
Right?
We all had firecrackers, but
All had cherry bombs.
The cherry bombs. That's right. Yep. But nonetheless, Georgie is very curious and he wants his boat back. He decides to reach in and try to grab the boat as he's asking Pennywise if the balloons float down there.
Yes.
And Pennywise responds with,
Oh, yes. They float, Georgie. They float. And when you're down here with me, you float too!
super scary. And you don't see, unlike the remake of it, you don't really see any sort of gore, but you understand what's happening here.
Yeah.
Right? You understand that he just had his entire arm ripped off. And
Yes.
it's just horrifying. Absolutely horrifying.
Yes. He was disarmed.
You're going to hell. That's what you. There's a special place in hell for people like you. Just absolutely.
Hashtag Brash is going to hell,
Brash is
baby.
going to hell. Yep, absolutely. One-way ticket. All right. We then cut to Bill looking at a scrapbook, and in the scrapbook he sees that black and white picture that we saw earlier,
Yes.
and that's his kid
As a
brother
kid.
George.
As a kid.
That fucking picture winks at him.
Dude! And when it, I don't care who you are. When that picture winks at him, and then you see him throw the book, and it starts bleeding, and you hear the dun 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 dun. God, dude, that is so horrifying.
Horrifying. Yeah, it's absolutely scary. I remember that was probably one of the scariest scenes in that whole movie when I was a kid. Because I did not expect that to happen. You know what I mean?
No.
It looked great.
Because it was all sweet and somber.
It was.
As he's looking at it, he sees his brother. He's like, Georgie, and then fucking Georgie smiling just goes, and it's like, what the hell?
Yeah, it's horrifying. Absolutely horrifying. It was great. But Bill's parents come in and they basically yell at him for being in Georgie's room, and they pick the book up off the floor covered in blood, and then just continue to berate Bill and say, you absolutely cannot be here. As they put the book away, there's obviously blood smearing everywhere on this mom's fingers. So they don't see the blood. They have no idea that there's blood there. Which is kind of weird, right? We don't know why that's happening, but we might find out.
Yes.
We never know. Next, we get to meet Ben. Ben is walking into his this apartment that is being built, and we find out that Ben is not only is he drunk, but he has some Colombian hooker with him.
And it's John Ritter, so it was probably a real scene.
It probably was. Yeah, that dude was partying like crazy.
Come and knock on my door. I'm going to rape you.
Oh, terrible. He was knocking on her door, like 100%. He was trying to knock on her door. But we find out that Ben is actually a very distinguished architect. And so that building is probably a building that he had designed. So he has free range to go in there whenever he wants and just, party his ass off with Colombian hookers, which good for him. Ben tells her that he used to be fat. He was like a regular butterball. And then they go in for a really weird kiss. This is a bizarre kiss.
Dude! All of John Ritter's kiss scenes are just
awful.
Gross.
Just awful. Ben gets interrupted with his disgusting kissing from a phone call with Mike. He's obviously very disheveled and concerned and decides to ride an elevator all the way to the top of the roof. While he's at the top of the roof, he looks down, and there's you can see kind of his mindset going, what am I going to do here? Right? So there was definitely trepidation on Ben's part, and maybe even Ben was thinking hey, maybe I should just end it all.
I'm jumping. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it might be better than what's to come. But Ben has, no, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. But Ben has, while he's looking off of the roof, he has a flashback. He remembers himself as a kid introducing himself to the class, and Henry Bowers is this greaser kid. So this is back in the 60s, obviously, and, you had greasers.
Greasers, to me, were always the kids that just always wanted to be in auto shop, working on the cars, right?
Yeah, they were like big into cars and restoration and stuff. Like, I guess that's what greasers were. But I don't know. I'd have to we need to interview a greaser. If you were a greaser back in the 60s, hit us up. Let us know what the fuck you were thinking. Peer pressure.
We want your side. Did you beat up kids? If you did.
Right. Were you a bullet? Were you Henry Bowers?
Were you Henry Bowers?
But in the middle of all this barraging, the teacher tells Henry that he must stay in class every day this week. Henry responds with,
My father will tan my hide.
You should have thought of that before you picked on Ben. Now, report to the principal's office.
This is kind of the only real idea that we get in the film that Henry is most likely an abused child.
Yeah.
So Henry, the reason he's
like all bullies,
like all bullies, they all came from really asshole fathers or absent fathers who were just beating the shit out of him, and that's the only real inclination in here. Now in the book it's a much broader spectrum of that, but in this miniseries, all we get is that one line, but it's enough to kind of piece together that Henry Bowers is probably very deathly afraid of his father. As Henry Bowers is leaving the class, he looks at Ben and says, "You're dead, fat boy."
Yeah. He didn't even do anything.
Yeah, Ben didn't even do anything. And Henry Bowers is like, "This is all your fault. I'll teach you.
I'll kill you.
This is your fault for being fat and me making fun of you."
Dude.
Crazy.
Shit.
Absolutely crazy. But Ben walks outside, and that's where Ben meets Beverly Marsh for the first time. You can tell that Ben has a little bit of a crush on Beverly Marsh, which is good. So we set up this little relationship of a fat kid who can't get the pretty girl.
Yes.
Ben is walking home, and he sees Henry's gang, who is just hanging out by the fence on top of this hill. Henry grabs Ben and tries to carve his name inside of Ben's stomach. Ben falls over the railing, falls all the way down the hill, and ends up in this little area which is known in Derry as the Barrens. Henry's gang follows Ben down to the Barrens, but Ben is hiding inside of a pipe. But Henry's gang do lay eyes on Bill and Eddie.
Yes.
They punk them out a little bit and saying, you better tell us where he is. And obviously they don't know where he is. But as they leave, Ben comes out of the pipe, and then Eddie is having an asthma attack at this time. Eddie can't use his inhaler because it's empty. So Bill goes and gets his medicine, and Ben hangs out with Eddie. So this is Ben's introduction to this group. So there was only Eddie and Bill, and now it's Eddie, Bill, and Ben.
Thanks for staying. Jeez, he's really got it bad. I'm scared he's going to slip into a coma like on Dr. Kildare.
But they all bond over something because they all want to build some sort of a dam at the Barrens, and they want to flood out the whole town, apparently. So good for them.
They had malicious intent because of Henry Bowers.
A bunch of fucking assholes.
Because of Henry Bowers and his friends, Belch and whoever the other fucking guy was. Speaking of which, do you recognize Belch?
No, who's Belch?
If you ever saw the Never-Ending Story, the guy who plays Belch is the bully in Never-Ending Story, the one that chases Bastion into the trash can.
I didn't know
that. Isn't that crazy?
I didn't know that. That's crazy.
Isn't that crazy? Because when I was watching it, I was looking at it, and I'm like, why does he look so familiar? So I stopped it to see what he was in, and it said most famous for the Never-Ending Story. And I'm like, holy shit, he's the bully that chases after him and then runs from Falcor and jumps into the dumpster himself.
Right. We then cut to Ben writing a love letter, or I guess a poem. And we don't know exactly who it's to, but we can kind of decipher, right?
The cheesiest fucking poem
Horrible
ever.
poem.
Fucking history of poems.
It's the stupidest thing. It's like 3 fucking lines. But Ben's cousin, apparently, sees him writing the poem, starts to make fun of him, and Ben beats the ever-loving fuck out of this kid.
Oh, Mom, stop that! Benjamin, parents can stop that immediately!
We then cut to that kid's mother talking to Ben's mother, and apparently they're sisters, and they're living there temporarily. We find out that happened because Ben's father had died in Korea. But then Ben's mother is talking to Ben outside, basically telling him to behave because they really have nowhere else to go. Ben is really upset that his mother asked him to apologize. And of course, all the stress from his father dying, he decides to run away. Ben runs down to the only place he really knows he feels safe, and that's back down to the Barrens. While Ben is down there by himself, he hears a voice in the distance call his name.
Ben! Benny! Up here, Ben!
Daddy?
Benny!
Even as a kid, like, you know what I mean? Like, innocence. Again, innocence or no. You know what I mean? That's not your dad. Your dad is, as grim as it is, his dad is gone, right?
But still, what's messed up is that, he hears his dad, right? And he goes and he checks it out. And what's his dad doing? His ghost dad doing? He's standing on the water. I brought you a balloon, and you hear his voice start to change, and now you start hearing Pennywise, and then it turns into Pennywise.
Yeah, scary.
And it's like okay, so not only does this clown come and kill you, this clown literally fucks with you and brings you your worst nightmare, and then laughs in your face about it.
Yeah.
That's the worst kind of nightmare.
And it's crazy too, because you find out like Pennywise is he's scaring these kids because he needs them afraid, so they're vulnerable enough to die. That's what Pennywise does. He scares you to death, he makes you crazy, and then he kills you. Which is like horrible. That's a horrible way to go.
That's a horrible way to go. Yeah.
But I love Ben's dad's way he says, "You'll like it down there. You never have to grow up." It's scary.
Yeah.
Come here, son. You'll like it down there.
You'll never have to grow up.
Pennywise disappears, and Ben then sees a rotting zombie skeleton thing emerge from the water and try to grab him. As the skeleton thing says, they all float down here, and when you're down here, you'll float too. We then cut to Beverly as an adult who she's about to give some presentation to a bunch of very important Japanese investors. Her boyfriend seems to be a very controlling person, so she gets this phone call.
Oh, he's a douche.
Oh, he's an asshole. Bev and her boyfriend obviously have a very successful relationship with the Japanese because later on that evening they are celebrating, they are sipping wine, and they presumably just got done doing the hibbity-dibbity. They end up needing more champagne, so the boyfriend goes to get some more champagne as Beverly receives a phone call from Mike.
Yes.
The boyfriend returns. Beverly is packing and says, I absolutely have to go to Maine because I got a call from a dear friend. And this guy proceeds to beat the shit out of her. Just beating the shit out of her. And you can tell, like, the way the dialogue and everything, you can tell, like, he has done this before. He is getting ready to do it again. And says, if you stop doing what you're doing, then you'll leave the house in 2 days instead of 2 weeks. So he's basically saying he's going to ground her. This is a grown-ass woman. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And he pulled out like a belt. He was going to beat her ass with a belt. And it's like, what the fuck?
Yeah, terrible. Just terrible. Beverly fights back and starts throwing stuff at him and then ends up throwing and landing a perfect shot of this, I guess, Maybelline face cream at his forehead.
Not ever again! Maybe it's Maybelline.
Bev says that if she ever come near me again, that she's going to kill him, so she just stood up to her bully. Yes. Bev then enters the cab and then has a flashback to when Bev was a child. So we start with Bev as a child seeing this poem that was dropped off on her front porch that was intercepted by her father. And her father is very reminiscent of her current boyfriend, who is obviously not happy about the fact that she got a poem from some random kid. The father smacks Beverly, and Beverly runs away as her father tries to catch her. But this little 12-year-old girl is way faster than her lanky father and ends up getting away. While Beverly is hiding in a bush, she runs into Ben, who brings her down to the Barrens, where she meets Eddie, Bill, Stan, and Richie. Bad. Oh, just okay, yeah.
You want to come down to the Barrens?
Yeah, you want to come down. You want to come down this field? Yeah, it's fucking weird, right? Like whatever. Innocence. There's /stupidity
down there.
Yeah. So after building the dam, they were all damned excited, and Bill is riding away on his bicycle as Beverly looks at him pretty lovingly and then recites the part of the poem that says,
My heart burns there too.
So Bev thinks that Bill wrote the poem. And I don't know.
Clearly, Bill had a relationship with his bike.
Yeah, Bill was
Because
trying to bang his bike.
We all know Bill was doing something to the spokes of his bike.
Absolutely. Well, I'd say the seat. You didn't see the seat fully on. Bill hopped on it with the seat off and then just, hi-oh, Silver! Away! Away! We then cut to Beverly over the bathroom sink, and she is just brushing her hair and doing her nightly routine. She goes to walk away, and she hears "Help Me" coming from the drain.
Yes.
This is a very horrifying scene because as she's saying, like, who's there? Like, it says it's all these different kids' voices.
Yes.
Right?
Calling out their names.
Calling out their names. And at the very end, they say, we're all the dead kids. Fucking scary.
Yes.
What the fuck you doing in there? Get out of there.
I'm Vicky Burrows. I'm Matthew O'Connor. We're all the dead kids.
I'd be like,
yep, gone. So then a red balloon starts to inflate out of the sink drain. The balloon ends up popping and blood just goes everywhere.
yes.
Beverly screams and then calls for her dad. Her dad comes in, looks at the sink as if something is maybe inside the drain. There's blood everywhere. He has blood all over his hands, and he's asking her what the problem is.
Well, explain yourself, girl.
Explain yourself,
What'd you
girl.
see?
What's in here? You know what I mean? Like, motherfucker. Bev is smart, though. She understands that her dad doesn't understand, or he doesn't see the blood. So Beverly makes up a story that there was this spider that crawled outside the drain and then went back inside.
I worry about you, baby.
Yeah. Sometimes I worry a lot. We then cut to Eddie Kasprak, who is walking out of his mother's house. This is a man who's probably, he's 40 years old.
He's 40 years old. He lives with his mother.
Still lives with his mother. Can you imagine such a thing? He is walking. Listen, if that's one of you, please don't unsubscribe. Like,
look, if you want to live with your mom, that's cool. It's expensive right now.
That's right.
I live in San Diego. He lives in Temecula.
These are hard
California is fucking expensive. You live with your mom, live with your mom.
Live with your mom, until you die. Just forever.
Just invite us over for tacos.
Hell yeah. But not at Eddie's house. So she probably has those vegan
Not at Eddie's
tacos.
house, no.
Who the fuck wants vegan tacos? What is that? It's It's a lettuce wrapped in a radish. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, like asthma spray sprayed on it. Blech.
Eddie gets picked up by his friend in a limousine, and that's where you get the idea that Eddie is actually a business owner of this limousine company. So that's Eddie's job. He's a business owner of a whatever. He's an owner of a limousine.
He's like the owner of like a limousine company. So probably picks up a lot of famous people. Probably makes a lot of money.
Probably makes a lot of money.
So far, everyone that we've met so far is very successful.
Doing very well. Yeah, absolutely.
With the exception of the one guy who's making phone calls to people.
the one guy who's actually the biggest important part of this film.
Who happens to be
No, don't. You're gonna get me in trouble.
A librarian.
So as Eddie is driving away, he then has his flashback to when he was a kid. He imagines himself in the movie theater with his friends, and they're all watching a horror classic film called I Was a Teenage Werewolf. Eddie accidentally kicks over a box of popcorn. It lands on Henry Bowers and his friends. So Henry Bowers is already pissed off. He looks up to the balcony, and then Richie Tozier decides it'd be a good idea also to throw soda on top of it.
Yes!
The kids all run back to the Barrens, and Bev ends up kissing a couple guys on the cheek. I'm going to mention that because it's going to preface something that's going to happen later that you're just not going to you're not going to fucking believe.
Uh-oh.
I
can't wait.
Because I thought so there's and look, and I'm gonna tell you, like, some people that have read the book are gonna know what I'm talking about, kind of like right now. But there's something to infer here. But we're gonna get to that later. I'll tell you about it later.
She bangs out the whole group in the book, doesn't she? She's such a hoe. She's a hoe, isn't she? After the kids get done having fun, they drop off
Eddie to his house, and his mother comes out in an absolute panic. She is terrified. She doesn't like the fact that he's out with his friends. She doesn't like the idea of him catching germs. She's telling him not to shower in gym class because he'll catch all these germs from other people.
Yeah.
And says to him, and this is like one of the cruelest thing a mother can say. She's like, you don't need any friends except for your own ma.
Dude, right?
Like, I understand you're trying to help, but that's fucking awful, dude. Like, to do that to a child. You know what I mean? Like, you can't have any friends except for me. Just absolutely.
Yes. Everyone had the worst bully.
They did. They all had
Everyone
their own,
had the worst bully so far. They all had their own bully, yeah.
Yep, their own people they had to fucking deal with.
Yeah.
So we then cut to the next day, and Eddie's gym teacher is actually making him shower because he found out he wasn't going to shower. While Eddie is in the shower, the shower heads start to move a little bit and start to spray like a really high pressure of water.
Yes.
And the shower heads actually come out from the walls and start to close him into this space.
Yes.
Eddie gets super scared with the towel around his body, crouches down to this little drying area thing after he sees Pennywise on the bottom with his little hand kind of jiggling the drain.
Yes.
That's scary.
So can I tell you that because of that scene, for the longest time, I was scared of drains in the middle of like that, like the middle of the shower. I would not stand on it. In fact, to this day, I don't stand anywhere near drains. Isn't that crazy?
That's scary, yeah.
Because of fucking Tim Curry, dude.
It has a long-lasting impact on you, absolutely. As Eddie is hiding in the drying area, Pennywise stretches out the drain and then comes out. This is really like bad. You know, nowadays it's like super bad special effects. But to use this stop animation / claymation to make this drain kind of open up and have Pennywise come out was pretty cool looking, right? You didn't expect that to happen.
He like started to change and did that growl and you see his teeth and his eyes and you're just like, fuck.
Yeah.
Like it's like at that point you realize, okay, this clown is scary.
Yeah, this is a fucked up clown. You know.
Yeah, this clown is scary and it will kill them.
We then cut to Richie as an adult who is doing stand-up comedy. So Richie is a very successful stand-up comedian. He is on TV, and he's doing all this comedy stuff. He's very excited about the act he just finished when he gets a phone call from Mike. Richie has a flashback of him hanging out with all the boys at the Barrens, and this is where we meet Officer Nell. Officer Nell never comes into the rest of the film at all. We see this one scene. But I wanted to mention it because behind the scenes, Officer Nell hated these fucking kids. The guy who played the cop absolutely hated these kids because they were rambunctious. They were messing around all the time on the set, apparently. And he really fucking hated them, which is probably why he would look so angry. This angry leprechaun, you know. But I did want to mention that because it's an interesting fact that like this actor legitimately hated these children. Richie then goes into the cafeteria and he accidentally bumps into Henry's gang, who accuses Richie of spilling the soda at the Paramount Theater. Henry takes mashed potatoes, smears it on Richie's glasses. Richie responds by throwing a tray into Henry's chest. As he runs away, he hits a teacher, who then tells tells Richie to go downstairs to the basement and get a mop from Mr. Marsh to clean this stuff up.
Yes. And you know what was funny? I just put two and two together right now. Who was the janitor? Mr. Marsh.
It was Beverly's dad.
It was Beverly's dad.
Yeah. So Richie goes down to the basement, calls for Mr. Marsh, but he ends up seeing the werewolf from I Was a Teenage Werewolf.
This isn't happening.
Richie starts to run away, hears a little bit of giggling, turns around, and then sees Pennywise there in the place of the werewolf.
And he does what? Beep, beep, Richie.
Beep, beep, Richie.
Dude.
Scary.
Beep, beep, Richie. Come back anytime.
Richie runs back into the cafeteria screaming for help because there's a werewolf in the basement, and all the kids laugh at him with the exception of his friends because we get the semblance there that maybe they have seen shit too.
Yeah.
So only these kids can see it.
They all look very like concerned and scared.
Yeah.
Like my favorite person to look at in that scene is Ben. Because Ben is like biting his nails and he's like kind of looking at like, what the fuck are we going to do? And it's so good because you're just like, holy shit, like Yeah, that's what you would be doing. You would
Yes.
literally like what would we do? And then like you just kind of be like, oh my god, another one.
Right. Yeah. No.
And
100%.
it's almost like, okay, I got to tell these guys.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Now it's time for Mike's flashback. Mike is a young kid talking to the class, presenting this storybook of all of these historic, disastrous events that took place in Derry. 1900, 1930, and of course right now we're in 1960. So some things are happening. Things seem to be happening every 30 years or so. As Mike is walking out to the street, Henry runs into him and threatens to put a cherry bomb in his pocket.
You like fireworks, boy? Huh? What do you say to a rocket in your pocket?
Mike manages to escape and finds the group hanging out by some metal structure in this dirt area.
Looked like a train yard, didn't it?
It did. Yeah, that's what I think it was, like an abandoned train yard or something. Henry chases Mike down to the group. Mike and the group collectively fend off Henry's gang with a bunch of rocks. They
stoned him to death.
They did it. You know, it was kind of brutal, wasn't it?
They stoned him, yeah.
A rock hits Beverly's stomach, and Ben is so upset that he goes down and throws fists with Henry. And
Ben charges Henry Bowers, yes.
It's pretty cool. And you can kind of see that little, like, there's definitely a connection there with Ben and Beverly. Well, at least in Ben's eyes there is. You know, Beverly still wants to bang Bill. Yeah. God, that was a nice poem.
Just that mole, though,
That's
bro.
right. Oh,
that Atkins mole, baby.
So gross. And then we cut back to the Barrens, where the group is flipping through this scrapbook of all these old pictures of Derry. Because now they are starting to talk about their experiences by seeing all these weird things that are happening and perhaps this clown. The book starts to turn pages by itself, and the picture of Derry and the town start coming alive. Pennywise tells the group, "I'm everything you ever were afraid of," and then his hand protrudes through the book.
I'm every nightmare you ever had. I am your worst dream come true. I'm everything you ever were afraid of.
The group is collectively afraid, obviously, but Stan is absolutely vehemently denying that he even saw anything. And the group is trying to convince him, like, yes, you saw it too, you know what you saw, and blah, blah, blah. But that's very important that Stan is just so incredibly scared. Probably more scared than anybody else in that group. We then cut to Stan getting a call from Mike. Stan is absolutely terrified that he's getting this call, but he doesn't necessarily tell his wife about anything. But he does go upstairs and say, I'm going to take a bath. When he gets into the bathroom, he starts to grab his ear as we fade into a flashback of young Stan grabbing his ear and then reciting these pledges for the Boy Scouts. This is probably how he calms his nerves. At this time, the group is practicing with a slingshot against all these glass bottles of who can have the best shot. And apparently Bev is a 10 for 10 shot. She is the best one of the group.
Yep.
So Richie gives Bev a pair of sterling silver earrings. And Bill is adamant about saying that these are silver and it can kill it, right? And Stan is saying this is all stuff you just see in movies. And Bill is telling Stan, just believe. Just believe. You have to believe. Right?
Yeah.
So we get that semblance, right? That if you just believe in something enough, or if you don't believe in something enough, it can greatly affect the outcome. But before the group enters into the ironworks, they all take a shot of Eddie's inhaler. This is their way of kind of bonding over this inhaler. This is a drastic difference from what they did to Bond in the book. Because in the book, and obviously they can't do this on TV, they apparently they all decided to have a gangbang with Bev.
No, they didn't in the book.
In the book, yeah.
They all banged out Bev in the book.
They all banged out Bev in the book, and I remember
I knew she was a hoe. Becky.
It was written, and this is the thing about Stephen King, right? He has very weird writing. I understand that there was a bond here, but we're talking about a bunch of 12 to 14-year-olds having sex.
Yes,
And
having sex.
It's really weird, and thank God they didn't do that. You know what I mean? So instead they shared an inhaler instead of Bev.
Instead of Bev.
But I remember in the book somebody had told me about this thing in the book. This is before I read it. I was like, that didn't happen. He's like, yeah, I remember. Like the best line was like, and then it was Ben's turn.
No way!
The group is actually followed into the steelwork area and inevitably the sewer by Henry and his gang. One member of Henry's gang that's not Belch, so it was Belch and one other person. And I
don't know his name.
I don't know either. I don't know if he says it, but anyway, the guy who's not Belch. They end up splitting up.
I thought that's number 3.
That's what white people do. They split up in dangerous situations. And fucking weird. This dude goes in to investigate, but you see a light protruding through these pipes that are kind of coming out from the pipes, and then you get a POV shot of this very bright light coming at this kid's face. So obviously this kid is going to die. So we know this kid's going to die. And obviously it's just inferred because we can't show that, but the kid more than likely died. The group walks down this chamber, and Stan gets drug away by Henry and Belch. We then see the light protruding from the pipe again and ends up grabbing Belch. I love how Belch folds like a lawn chair.
Yeah, dude. It's so creepy and how he just goes in.
Yeah.
And like the look on his face, like he's not scared. He's just stunned.
He's absolutely shocked.
His expression is stunned like.
Henry is concerned. He calls for Belch. And I love Henry's line because Henry says, "Oh my God, he's not in there anymore."
Yeah.
It's fucking scary.
He's not in there anymore.
Boom, the light comes back.
Yes.
Comes right back, and then we see the POV shot again of the light. Stan and Henry are on the floor. Stan ends up running away, but Henry is looking straight into the light.
Yes.
We then see a side shot of Henry, and his hair had turned completely white. From whatever it is that he saw. Pretty cool.
So you know, when I remember seeing his hair turn white, I remember being a kid thinking, oh my God, what the hell did he just see?
Right. We never see what they see. And it's pretty cool that you don't really see that because it's really is up to your imagination.
Yes.
Stan runs away and finds the rest of the group at this center point in the sewer. The group all join hands as the underbelly of this creature flies overhead of them. And we see a very small glimpse of these bright lights underneath the belly of whatever this creature is.
Yes.
The kids stand up, and the space completely fills up with all this fog.
Yes.
They all take hands, and as they take hands, Bill sees his kid brother George.
Yes.
Bev sees her dad, and Richie feels these werewolf hands on his shoulders. I love how Richie says,
I said there ain't nothing there.
And then you see the wolf hand just go,
oh,
sorry.
My bad. Like the crate, you know.
Yeah.
Stan is reciting the Boy Scout treaty thing, but he then all of a sudden hears his name being called by Pennywise. He looks over, and whoever was holding Stan's hand originally is no longer there. It's actually being held by the glove of Pennywise. Pennywise takes Stan, slams him against the wall, and tells him to let go and be afraid because that's when they taste so much better.
You all taste so much better when you're afraid.
Hurry, Bev, kill it!
Eddie decides to be the hero, goes up to Pennywise, grabbing his inhaler, shoving it in his face, and says, "This is battery acid, you slime." Sprays the inhaler in Pennywise's face, and Pennywise's face starts to melt uncontrollably.
This is battery acid, you slime!
Bev takes the slingshot and shoots an earring in Pennywise's head, cracking it open, and all of this light is now emitting from the hole in his head.
Yes!
Pennywise then takes a page out of Mortal Kombat's book, does a front flip in the air, and goes into the drain. Again, not the greatest animation here. Not the greatest animation here, but it was still pretty cool to see Pennywise go down the drain. The kids try to grab hold of his hand, but the hand breaks apart and turns into this monstrous claws and then goes down the drain.
Yes.
The kids, feeling that they at least put the clown to sleep, emerge from the sewer, and Bill asks them all to promise that if it does come back, then they'll all come back to fight it again.
And have another go at Bev?
I hope not. Right. Well, at least then they'd be older. You know what I mean? Like 12 and 14.
At least then they would all be 12.
Fucking horrible. Just horrible.
Ew.
Everybody swears to come back. And Stan is the last one to swear. As a matter of fact, when everybody's kind of swearing, they're panning around, it skips Stan. Stan refuses to say anything. And it circles back around to Stan, and Stan finally says, yes, I promise I'm going to come back. We then cut back to Stan's wife, who is asking Stan how he's doing in the tub, and opens the door and gets a very interesting surprise.